We are gathered here today to celebrate the love between two people whose lives were ostensibly brought together by the fated flap of a butterfly wing. It is all but impossible to explain why things happen the way they do. Our lives are like little baby crows, carried upon a curious wind, and all we can wish for our families, for those we love, is that that wind will eventually place us on solid ground. And I believe it's done just that for my family here in this little town in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, I think we're good. Okay.
And now I will ask David, Rose, and Patrick Brewer to exchange their vows.
David. I can't believe this is happening. I'm gonna keep this very short because I think you already know that I would climb 1,000 mountains for you. So I'll just say this. You will always be a part of me. And I'm part of you indefinitely. Boy, don't you know you can't escape me. 'Cause you know you'll always be my baby. And we'll linger on. Time can't erase a feeling that's strong. No way you're never gonna shake me. Ooh, darling, 'cause you'll always be my baby.
David.
Yes? Patrick. I've never liked a smile as much as I like yours. I've never felt as safe as I do when I'm with you. I've never known love like I have when we're together. It's not been an easy road for me, but knowing that you will always be there for me at the end of it makes everything okay. Patrick Brewer, you are my happy ending.
I mean, I pretty much know the scene by heart. I am so thrilled to be here to celebrate Schitts Creek. I can't believe that I'm in this position of getting to talk to all of you guys at this wonderful industry screening. And here we have with us the stars of Schitts Creek, Eugene Levy, an old buddy of mine who played the family patriarch Johnny Rose, Catherine O'Hara, Moira Rose, of course, Dan Levy, along with his dad, the creator, also writer, director, produced all the things, and David Rose, and of course, Annie Murphy as Alexis Rose. And I'm so happy to meet you, Annie. I'm a huge fan of yours. Bears Beats, Battlestar Galactica. I mean, I'm right there with you. So just to start us off, Schitts Creek feels like the perfect pandemic splurge because the Rose's time in the town of Schitts Creek, living in these two just claustrophobic hotel rooms, mirrors the world's collective experience of quarantine, going from endless travel, work, kids going all different directions, to being forced to have to deal with each other and nothing but each other. As Alexis said, we went a year without seeing each other. What starts as a fish out of water comedy finishes as a homey family connection. Connections are everything, love letter to the silver linings. And that's why I think it's feeling so especially great right now. And in the process of this, David's relationship with his boyfriend, Patrick, courtship, and ultimately, as you see, marriage, kind of redefines sexuality on screen, and just it's groundbreaking in its normalcy, and how much the fact that these are two men getting married that we're celebrating is just a happenstance instead of the thing. So, having said that, welcome. Hi, guys.
First of all, what a beautiful introduction.
That was
wow. Thank you.
Yeah, so weird because there's no audience, but there is. And I'm supposed to do the interviewing, which is the strangest part of all. So I just have a couple of personal things that I need tied up. The actual wedding vows, David, did you guys cross shoot that, or whose side went first? I'm just curious. Who did you shoot first?
It's something that I should actually remember. I don't think we cross-shot that. I think on the day, well, first of all, our budget was so small that I know that we had 3 cameras there, which was a luxury for us. But I think we needed to maximize the coverage we were getting. So I think one camera was on Noah, one camera was on the audience, one camera was on Catherine. And then I think we swung around to me after, just because I guess that was how the day went. But no, it was not cross shot. I wish that we had the luxury to do that. It saved us some time.
The flowers.
You had to save the flowers. It's always something like that, isn't it?
Budget was. We had
exactly.
Flowers. We had no budget.
Yeah. Those were plastic flowers, by the way.
But the funny thing about that whole scene, Jennifer, was that there were so many people sobbing from the very first rehearsal. It was an amazing day. By the end of the day, we were literally cried out. I think it just, couldn't squeeze another tear out of anybody. It was like the real thing.
Well, there was so much in it too, right? I mean, it was the culmination of the story. It's the culmination of the series. It's everything that it means and that that it means for generations in front of you. Did you hold on?
Yeah, and I really saying goodbye to the cast and the crew. Everybody in that room, in that set, we're going to say goodbye to very soon after. And it's easy to cry.
And we shot, it was our last day shooting on our sets. So the way that we shot, we did about a month and a half on our sets, and then we took a brief hiatus, and then we would shoot all on location. So a lot of our show was block shot. And so that particular day was shot, was the last day that we shot on our set. So it had this kind of melancholy magic in the air because it was the last time we were going to get to walk through the cafe and be in the motel and be in the town hall. So there was this kind of sweet nostalgia that was in the air. And I think for me in particular on that day, when you're writing those scenes, and we would write in advance, so much of it really in our show in particular came alive when the actors got it on its feet. And I think, when you're writing the series finale of a television show, you're just constantly walking around scared that you're going to make a mistake. And especially when it comes to a wedding, you want to write that wedding perfectly. You want, to give your actors everything they could possibly have to work with on that day to make that moment work. And it really was when we all kind of walked into the rehearsal of that scene and did it. It was the most incredible experience to be in that room with our cast and our crew who was watching on the sidelines and being there, because so much of it was real. So much of the emotion in it was real. And I knew kind of in that moment after we had rehearsed it and blocked it that I think we were going to land this finale in a way that was going to be exactly as I hoped it would be, kind of from an emotional standpoint. So that day was probably one of the most extraordinary days I had shooting our show.
And it didn't help that the very first thing that we sorry, Jennifer. Very first thing that we did that day was the jazz. We all sat around in like this beautifully decorated town hall, and the Jazzagals recorded their parts. So it was just all of us sitting there in the pews listening to these angels sing the most heartbreaking songs. And so that kind of set the tone for the day, and it was all downhill/uphill from there.
So the Jazzagals were, they were the Jazzagals. It wasn't a loop group.
No.
Yeah, no,
that was them. Yeah.
Again, budget.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the moments that, the first moment that really gets me in the wedding, and that I cry every time that I've seen it, or the one time that I saw it. I mean, it's not a big deal, but is when you say, Dan, to Alexis, I have to tell you, I'm continually impressed by you. Because I think it speaks so much about your character, Annie, your growth over this series. You come into the show as like the pinnacle of just vacuous, selfish, insecure. You know what I mean? Like that's what's fun about it. That's what's luxurious about it. Is how much you guys lean into who you are in the beginning, and you go on this huge journey. I mean, I think maybe more than anyone, Annie, and I think you took us along so masterfully we didn't even know that you were doing it. Were you aware of your character's arc, and were you thinking that way, and were you thinking about grounding yourself?
I mean, I'm so grateful to Dan and the writers for writing this incredible arc and writing so many layers into this character that, especially when we meet, is so deeply unlikable, and also so I think could have so easily been just kind of a stereotype and a caricature. But to see that growth over the 6 seasons, having her coming in dependent on men and on money and on things, and then leave with a brain full of high school knowledge and then college knowledge, and this desire to go off on her own and keep pursuing independence. You don't get an opportunity to play a deep and layered role like that that often. And so I just had the best time. And as cheesy as this sounds, I'm so proud of Alexis and where she left off. And as I said, I have Dan and the writers to thank for that. It was just the best.
You do have Dan and the writers to thank for that, but it is in you too. It really is. I mean, to have the through line of Alexis be so vivid and still find a way to kind of make her more and more gentle and more of the earth. It was really masterful. I feel like in the final season, that I know you have to hear this all the time, but that breakup scene was was just as beautifully done as just about anything I have ever seen. And when you stop and tell your mom, who is, sorry, Catherine, she's not really your mom.
You can call her mom.
When you stop and tell her how hard it is that you're leaving, I think that just, and she's kind of trying to slough off her sentimentality. I love that you let Alexis just go there. It's really, and then you undercut it with a boop. I mean, brilliant. So Wait, I had more questions though, instead of just a monologue.
And the character, Jennifer, the character, is what's so amazing about it, and such a great performance that Annie gave, is the character is so not her. It's so far removed from, who Annie is. You realize that it is a performance kind of that just goes beyond. It's incredible what, from day one, that was the character that walked on the set.
Hey, okay,
that never be
shucks. Thank you.
No, and I think no, and that was what I think even from the early days of casting the role. I mean, it's really hard to find, and I think for actors, it really is a testament to, like, you walk into the room and you're either the part or you're not the part. You either bring that intangible kind of gift to the casting directors, or it just doesn't, it's not the right fit, which means that something else is down the line. But I think we've been so lucky in this show to have had people walk into that casting room and it was like the lights went on and suddenly there was such a clarity and a focus to these characters that helped from a writing standpoint so profoundly, because once you get a sense of what your actors can do, that's when you get to push them and twist them and stretch them to the farthest lengths of where they can go. And that, to me, was the great thrill of writing for the show too, was knowing the breadth of quality and skill from our cast. I mean, when you know that you can push people like that, it just makes the writer's room that much more exciting, because then you're thinking, what can we do with these characters above and beyond what we've already established? How can we challenge our actors? And as an actor who was in the show, I was constantly aware of challenging our cast season after season, giving them reason and incentive to come back to work and feel inspired and excited about every new season. I never wanted the experience to feel like, oh, I'm coming back to work. I wanted each season to really be a challenge and a showcase for just how incredible our whole cast was. Annie specifically, but our whole cast as well.
So, talking about pushing character, I think that takes us pretty sweetly into Moira Rose. I mean, Catherine, it's so fun. There's nothing more fun, I think, on the planet than watching you in this role and watching you just chew it up. That people have made a kind of a reference that my character in Alias, Sydney Bristow, goes on to be Moira Rose because we wear so many of the same kinds of, so many of the same wigs. And I really did that. I really grabbed onto that. And I feel like that gives me a reason to feel like, well, maybe, when you guys have a reunion, I should be there. But my question, Catherine, is
I'm flattered.
because I watched the show as it was coming out. I've hunted it down. I remember when you guys were first doing press and didn't you have to hold up a sign that spelled out Schitts Creek?
Well, yeah, couldn't say it. They couldn't say it unless they held up a sign that showed you how it was spelled, just in case people thought it might be another spelling. So yeah, that's true. We got a lot of mileage out of it.
Holding up the sign, Eugene, on something. So I hunted you down on Pop Canada TV. The TV of Canada. and I stuck with you ever since. But today I've binge watched quite a bit, to the horror of my children, who have heard words coming from my television that they don't know that I would ever listen to. And Catherine, what I'm wondering is, did you have a set of rules for yourself with Moira's specific dialect, or did it change and morph as you went? Did it grow into what it ended up being? Did you start off with the thesaurus next to your sides, or?
Yeah, the idea of the vocabulary was always there, as we discussed before we shot anything, and before they really got into writing the scripts. Yeah, we talked about someone who learns words, takes the English language very seriously, and learns different words every day, and then is determined to put them into vocabulary, into the day's conversations. And for Moira, eventually I decided that she's giving this gift to whoever is in her presence. She's sharing this as long as she has to be in this town. In this town, she's going to share the wealth of her, beauty and her education and her world travels, and so that was always there. But and at first it was a thesaurus, and then Lucky, our makeup artist, gave me a book called Foyle's Philavery, and I later found Foyle's Further Philavery, and then got another book called Mrs. Reed's something, or whatever, sorry, Mrs. Burns. But then Daniel and the writers really got into writing great expressions for, disgruntled pelican and vigor of a wartime radio operator. I mean, there were so many. But just this, more than just vocabulary, they really gave me just bizarre ways of expressing myself, which, just added so much to the vocabulary because they're just words. But that was really fun to have that to play with, and to be able to, Daniel would let me, flower up the dialogue if there weren't quite enough big words in there. I'd get to play with it.
It would only come off making you look better. So.
Sorry?
I said it would only come off making us, the writers, look better. And Catherine, I mean, to her credit, so much of what she brought to the role was, was those, the dialogue and the isms that were so a part of her character. And I think, all we could do was really allow for the freedom to have Catherine and to have the majority of all of our cast feel like they can contribute in ways that perhaps benefited their character in kind of eccentric moments that the writers wouldn't have thought about. Because I think there's only so much that you can write for a character, especially when you get into like seasons of television. The actors have an innate understanding of who their characters are just as much as the writers do writing them. So leaving that window open to have the cast contribute or feel free to contribute ideas and, sayings. I mean, even in the early seasons of the show, like, the You Get Murdered First for once was like an Annie ad lib that ended up becoming like this back and forth. And there's been so many kind of countless, experiences where cast have said, well, could I try it like this? Or what if I said it like this? And, you just go with what's best. And fortunately, we just had a treasure trove of talent when it came to actors who could write well.
Well, that was something that I actually wrote this down. I said, I can't tell if it's so well written it feels improvised, or if you're such strong improvisationalists that it feels really well written. So how much did you guys, how much did you play?
We had great,
a lot.
I'm going to turn on a light. I'm going to turn on a light.
Not the sun is setting on you, and you're almost in complete pitch blackness.
Almost looks like
eyes.
Yeah, well, it's getting dark up there in Muskoka. No, not a lot. Not a lot of improvising. I think there was stuff that kind of popped in, usually toward the end of a scene. Where a scene kind of ends, and then, an actor would just kind of keep going and add something. And a lot of times that was used. But the writing was pretty solid on the show. He didn't want to mess with that. But it was, and if there was input, we would discuss it before we went on camera. To say, what about this? What if we did this? What if we went in this direction? And then it was kind of a group discussion with the actors. And, if it was something, on the major side, it would be with the writers and Dan.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what table reads so effective for. I mean, I personally just hated them because I feel like so much of our show lived on its feet, and so much of our show was in the physicality and the reactions of the performances, and not necessarily, it wasn't like a 12 jokes per page show. The jokes were there, but they were in the glances or in the reactions, and in editing the show, you know, I spent so much time with our editors scouring the footage for people in the background who might have just given a funny reaction to something that Moira had said. So it was a very dimensional process in terms of mining the comedy out of the situation. So a lot of the adjustments that were made in the table read, by the time we got to script, were basically kind of rewritten back into the show. So I would say it's like 80-20 by the end. And then that 20% really being kind of a little bit of improv at the beginnings and ends of scenes. I think we played a lot with blocking. That's where I think cast would really kind of have fun with what they were doing and how they were going to exit and enter a scene. So that's where the looseness of it, I think, comes from. And also just, you know, the actors just being very good at delivering the lines.
But also knowing that you are all knowing that you're all really respected by, you know, the creators of the show, and knowing that if you are inspired by the script to come up with something, that you have the freedom to do it. It may not get used, but no one's stifling. There was no spirit crushing on that set at all. You know, everybody knew they were respected, and that the best was expected of them. So it's just the loveliest way to work. Thank you, Daniel.
It really is. It really does leave you so open for imagination, doesn't it? When you feel that is, it's not that you need to all the time, because so often I feel like when you start improvising, you just add a button to a scene and then someone buttons your button, and then the next thing you know, the scene's 10 minutes long, and it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. We can be funny at the end of a scene. But but if that spirit is there in just the environment, it just leaves everything feeling ripe and alive. And I feel like from the outside in, it looked like that was very much the case.
It was.
The physicality, Catherine.
Go.
Sorry.
One of my favorite. Okay, sorry. One of my favorite physical moments that I can picture in my mind. I know this is going to seem, well, there are a couple, but oh gosh, they're all Catherine. But there are a couple that I have to say. Okay, wait. There's one Eugene, but one is you climbing into the closet after The Crows has been canceled, and you just kind of slither into the closet, and it's so the spirit of an actor. I so know that feeling of having to climb into the closet and live there, and the way you did it, I just think anyone on this Zoom can really just hang on to that. And then you lived there. It was so brilliant. The other one is in the new hotel room where you have the duster and you're pissed off and you're kind of flinging it around. I'm sorry. It was so brilliant. Yeah. Eugene, at the top of, you know, the top of one of the seasons where you're running as fast as you can and you come in, or maybe it's the end of a season, and you say, "We're out, we're getting out," and you sell it to the guy who has the heart attack. Was that you, or was that a stunt double? Just curious.
Stunt double.
No, yeah, it's a lot of running, right? Was it really?
100% him. And I wrote it, I don't want to say as a form of torture, but I wrote it, you know, because I thought it could be a fun thing to have him do. Again, can't afford a stunt double. So everything in the show is done by the actors. Yeah. Whether they
and the poor man was just sprinting down the street in a full, like, 3-piece suit in the middle of summer.
Middle of summer. Was just in dress shoes.
Yes, I saw it. You start on the shoes and go up, so it's one shot. It's not like you're sneaking in a pair of, you know, sneakers.
No, long distance running in dress shoes. One of the many things my son wrote in for me that just tickled me to no end.
You're such an athletic man that I thought, why not just play on those skills?
I totally understand that. I get that. I get how that happened. Yeah, but that was a lot of running. But it did lead to a very kind of funny scene at the end when I finally get there.
It is. It's very funny.
Oh, that's where Catherine. That's where you, when I come in and I'm out of breath, and you actually drop to your knees, saying my name, walking to me on your knees. That's how excited you were at the possibility of getting out of that town.
Yeah.
That's right. These two were dancing.
Yeah, I think I mounted Dan at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
We thought we were going somewhere.
How far into it? Because there's such rich relationships here off screen. I mean, obviously, you guys have such a history together. You guys can't tell who I'm talking to, can you? Eugene and Catherine. It's like you've been in a repertory theater your entire lives with each other, you know. And I can't even imagine going back to that over and over, the comfort you must have just constantly derived from each other on set.
Yeah.
Being each other's biggest fan, you know, knowing whatever you toss out there is going to be caught, all of it.
That's true. I mean, it's true, Catherine, isn't it? I mean, it's been a lot of years that we have, you know, not continuously worked together, but we, you know, jobs kind of came up, and few of them were married couples or ex-married couples. But I think that familiarity kind of lent itself to a marriage, which is a kind of a 40-year marriage on camera, on TV, The Roses. I think it saved a lot of work. I think it saved a lot.
The central marriage, the big relationship of the show is it's something that I think people derive so much comfort from, that you guys, no matter what, you're always solid. And I think part of that is because of your comfort with each other, and also just the dignity you give each other in the show. But one thing that I was thinking about, Eugene, is that, I mean, every actor that's watching this has been on one side of this equation or the other, but part of the reason everyone else can have so much fun and be so wackadoo is because of your elegance, and because you just go understated and take the just remain a gentleman throughout it all, which is how I know you to be as a person. But did you ever feel like, when you were watching them up there doing cabaret or something, did you feel like, well, I want to go off, I want to have my day?
A little bit. No, it was a choice from the very beginning that I was very excited about. I knew that there had to be a character in the show that was straight, that was grounded, that kind of kept the, you know, story going. The straight man in the show. And the thought of doing that was exciting for me, because if you've seen my work, I tend to go, you know, the other way, a little wackadoodle, with some character work, which I was always very comfortable with. The idea of playing a character that was remotely close to who I actually was and looked like who I was always went on camera with very little confidence over the years. So I always kind of, you know, played characters that looked as far from me as I possibly could. But this was Johnny had to be the straight guy, and he had to kind of hold the family together, being a CEO of the second largest video chain in North America, instilling, you know, the kind of or showing the kind of leadership that would instill confidence in his employees was the same vibe that he had when everything hit the fan, and they ended up in this motel in Schitts Creek. Had to keep it together and deal with things the way he would, in business, which is just, keep everything on a very level plane, so that people wouldn't fall apart.
Do you feel like, I guess I'm asking an audience that can't answer me, but I guess that I should say, to me, I'm imagining that you were the same person to the cast and crew that you are for all of us as Johnny Rose. Is that right, Annie? Yes.
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 Mm-hmm. Yes. 100%.
Elegant gentleman.
Is a dad and a gentleman at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had my moments, I think, that people might have, been trembling on set a little bit when I, would lose it.
Yeah.
Much
trembling.
If I had to leave the room and somebody was in my way, I would say, "Excuse me," and I think they would know by the way I said, "Excuse me," that I meant business.
I'm trembling right now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I imagine you getting grumpy on set. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it was as close to me, I think, as anything that I've done, and that was a big hurdle for me to get over. And I actually loved it. I loved playing Johnny Rose on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tip my cap to you, because it's hard to play someone close to yourself and make him so real for everyone else and not just kind of sit back on your heels. You really do lead the way. And I was going to say, I imagine the days that you had a moment on set very much like my beloved Victor Garber, which when Victor is grumpy on set, it would just be my favorite thing in the whole world. He would get mad at props. He would say, damn it. And it would just make me so happy. It's just, what's better?
Oh my God. Did you see Victor on the show, Jennifer?
Of course I saw Victor. He called me and told me he was going. I spoke to him when he was there. I mean, I was pretty involved in the whole thing, actually. Surprised he didn't tell you guys, but whatever.
He was so funny.
Yeah, such a breath of fresh air in that world. It was tricky, and it took someone like Victor, who was just so good at like dimensionalizing, if that's even a word, something that could play as so flat, the like ex-soap star coming in, and he brought such a depth to it and such a humor to it, which is a hard thing to do when you're playing like a person who doesn't have a ton of humor. His character on our table,
the table read when we were all, Victor was still in LA and we were all in Toronto, and we were sitting around doing the read, and someone just put their cell phone in a bowl, and Victor Garber's beautiful voice was just coming out of this bowl, and he had nailed the character right out of the gates and was making people just absolutely crack up. But it was so funny to just have this tiny bowl like with Victor Garber's soul in it.
Speaking to the wonderful budget of our show, Victor's table read involved a cell phone in a bowl. So
yeah, there we go.
Still
perfect
impressed.
As is.
Exactly.
You didn't have a ton of outside players. I mean, the town was really complete as the town, right? It must have been so cozy.
Yeah.
It was.
So I want to know about where you guys were shooting, because it just looked like heaven on earth.
Aww.
We had 2 locations. One was this little town of Goodwood, Ontario, which acted as where the Rose Apothecary was. And then we had Bob's Garage. I'm like putting it out on a map that no one can see. But anyway, it's where the cafe was, the apothecary was, and Bob's Garage was. So we were there for like a week and a half. Then we would go to the actual exterior of the motel, because the interiors of the motel were on sets. Although people still to this day are shocked by the fact that it wasn't actually... The rooms weren't actually in that location. And that was always it was Hockley Valley, Ontario. And it is absolutely picturesque. And the drives to work every day were just early morning, sun kind of cresting over green rolling hills. And you show up to work. The base camp was in this like field that was so gorgeous. And then, the drive was 2 minutes and suddenly you were there. It was really, and in the early days, we would play volleyball behind the motel at lunch. And, it was, a lot of people called it summer camp, and it really was.
Well, and we have to thank Catherine, because Catherine did not want to shoot in the summer because she's up in Muskoka, of course. So we
nobody outside of Canada knows what Muskoka is, though, Dad.
Well, it's 1,000 lakes north of Toronto, and everybody cottages up there. All good Canadians have a cottage.
You've got Marty
and
yeah.
That was it.
Okay.
So we ended up shooting our location stuff in the month of June, which was just a lovely month to shoot. And then at the end of June, we were done and summer just started. So thank you, Catherine, for that.
Thanks, Catherine.
No, thank you. It was so perfect. And everybody on the crew could go and be with their kids who were just getting out of school at the same time. And it was, everything about it was lovely. Yeah.
So was the last scene that you guys shot the goodbye?
The last scene that for Dan and myself was the goodbye scene. And
me.
That was, and you too, right? You had like a little driving bit, right. So those tears are not fake tears. Those are very real tears. And I think I've been saying, I think you can just basically see Annie Murphy and Dan Levy, and it's not David and Alexis. It's the two of us having a real cry. It was kind of the perfect way to end everything.
It was, because sometimes crying for a period of time is like not easy, particularly when you have to do coverage and like you're shooting the scene for a minute. So to have that kind of emotional undercurrent helping to provide it was just, the moment was so, for Annie, the whole last season, Annie like never cried at table read, was very stoic. And I was always the one being like, really? So the last episode table read, just not doing it for you? Okay. When's she gonna break? And then I feel like towards the end,
the last day,
almost to just bug me. And then finally on that last day in the rehearsal, Annie completely fell apart. And I don't want to say that it made me feel good, but it was a nice thing to know that like...
You laughed maniacally. You saw me crying and you were like...
It happened.
Just been waiting for it.
But there's something, I feel like all of us on this chat know now what it's like to shoot a last episode of a series, and a series that was quite definitive. I lived and breathed for Alias. That's just a sidebar, and hopefully one day I can tell you all about my feelings and love for it, and how it shaped my life in 1,000 ways. But I think the joy of watching the last episode of a television show is that you get to search for those moments where you're looking, I remember watching the finale of Friends, and you're kind of watching these people who their whole lives had changed by way of this show. And part of the joy and the excitement of watching that last episode is trying to discern, is it the character or is it the actor? And the beauty of it is that it's both. And if you can do it properly, and if it's, if the story's told right, that you really get to maximize that sadness and happiness and joy and pride and all of those feelings that come with saying goodbye to something that you love so much. So to get to do it ourselves was such a a joy.
I can hardly watch last episodes of shows because it just, goodbyes are so hard. I've never seen the final episode of Alias because I say goodbye to Victor in it and I just can't even take it. But your show really did that for me too. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to call him. Wait, I have more questions. Can talk amongst yourselves.
Yes.
Love that.
Did you struggle in the last episode of Alias? When you were shooting the last episode of Alias, was it as much of a struggle as it was for us? Yeah.
Oh, you can't even speak.
Dan, change the topic.
At the end, they wrapped me. And no, it's okay. It's a beautiful thing. They wrapped me and they said they wanted me to give a speech. And the whole stage was packed with anyone who had ever worked on the show. And I just couldn't even, so I just hugged every single person there and I just said, thank you. And I just remember like it was just a mantra. I had to say it 1,000 times in order to say it, even begin to say it enough, just because how do you cap that? I mean, you guys will finish this season and of course you'll still see each other, but this moment will start, you know how it is. It dissipates a little and luckily we're actors. We go on. We have another one.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have the memory.
Yes. Yes, we do. Hopefully we go on. But that scene, that scene.
Come in the closet.
Exactly. We're just spend the rest of your days in the
around for the
closet.
closest closet here.
Speaking of the closet, I have to say,
I actually imagine the Roses are still living somewhere. Even though I played one of them, I think they're going on without us. They actually,
I do too.
lives
I think
continue.
it's to preserve our own sanity. I do the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
And it is one of those weird things. Go
ahead.
for it.
Nope.
I was just gonna say, it's one of those weird things because I think I don't. Annie and I don't have the years of experience that my dad and Catherine have, and so I think going into this show, there were so many things that you read as an actor. And Annie, jump in anytime. Where actors are saying like, I said goodbye to the character, and it really felt like a goodbye, like I was stepping out of that person and it took me a minute. And I would always think like, or, when the moment's right, you lose yourself to the dialogue. And
and you're like, ugh.
What I had done previously was just a Lifetime movie that wasn't very good. But you realize in those moments, and we've talked about this, Annie, that like you do. I remember saying goodbye took David's shoes off on that last day, his little like Converse, Rick Owens Converse, and I put them down. And it was like you're saying goodbye to someone who gave you so much of themselves in a weird way. Like it sounds pretentious until you're actually living it. And then you realize, oh, all of these inside the actor's studio stories that you hear are really true when you find that part that changes you and that you really do give yourself over to the character and it becomes someone outside of yourself. It's incredible.
Yeah.
That's myself. Goodbye.
You booped your in the mirror?
You booped yourself?
Yeah. I booped myself in the mirror. How?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, that's why those hugs were. That's why that scene was probably the most memorable for me. The family hug, and Stevie being there as well. Those hugs were amazing because we were saying goodbye to the characters and we were saying goodbye to each other, and to a show that we just had 6 years of such joy working on. So when you have a scene at the end where you have that kind of contact, actually you can actually hug right near the end of the series. I mean, that's overwhelming, really.
Yeah,
it was
I mean,
lovely. It was lovely to have.
Yeah, and I even in the wedding scene, I built in the David says thank you to Johnny, which has like obviously has like layers of meaning to it, and that you know that moment was so much more than just David and Johnny. It was like me sort of ultimately saying thank you for an opportunity.
That moment gets me every time. Yeah.
I mean, the
got
layers,
me then, even though I was sitting beside Roland. Yeah.
The layers in the whole wedding, just, I mean, like you said, the wedding really does deliver, and it clearly, I feel like your emotion, Catherine, took you by surprise when you were performing it. I don't know if that's just me, projecting that onto you, but I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like that scene kind of happened to you.
Well, it was true for Moira, for sure. Finally, Moira got what she wanted all these years. She was getting out, and, be careful what you look for, because, she's looking around and realizing what she's going to miss. And just the beauty of David and Patrick's relationship, and to see David be so happy and to be loved by such a wonderful person. All of that's real for Moira. And for me, it was, as I said, saying goodbye to everybody, in this beautiful setting with the beautiful Jazzy singing. But we talked about it. I knew I was going to cry, but, I cried, of course, on camera, and I cried every bit of coverage all day for everybody. And that was easy, as I said, because you just look at them and you think not only of their characters, but what they're going through. But honestly, as insane as I may have looked to some people, it was really about David and Patrick, and you could feel it in the room. It felt real, and it was beautiful, and there was nothing but love there, and everything. The reality behind the scene just gave so much more to it.
Did you plan to? Was it written in that you were going to forget Patrick's last name? Was that in the script?
Was it?
Where you say Patrick?
I can't recall.
Get back,
because I had one.
Yeah, I think I feel like the forgetting the names is a very our writers' room kind of. We loved a good Moira can't remember the name. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it I remember was scripted because it was. I remember writing that episode. We had, obviously an incredible room of writers who helped break it, and I remember sitting down to write that episode, and I wrote the whole thing in like 3 hours, and nothing had come so easily. And funnily enough, I remember the table read where everyone reads it and then you get your notes. And I remember there really being no notes for the first time, maybe ever. And I knew that something was good was kind of happening. But I also think, it's important to give a big shout out to Lucky and Anya, who did Catherine's hair and makeup on that day, because their turnarounds, again, didn't have a ton of time. And any time we did a take, they had to clean up her whole face. And it was just obviously the joke that there was mascara like running down her face. And it was like a pit crew. The minute we yelled cut, Catherine was kind of whisked off set. Lucky and Anya were there like tools in hand, and like no time at all, Catherine was back out looking as if she hadn't just cried off, a whole bucket of mascara. That day, I think from like a production standpoint, you want to also use those moments, those last few moments, to really write a love letter to your crew as well. And I think for us, we're not a big, bold show that has huge production value and big sets. So it was important for us in that last episode to showcase all of the different departments. And that wedding really was kind of, from a creator standpoint, a love letter to our crew, because you got to see the peak wardrobe for everybody. You got to see hair like you've never seen before, and makeup like you've never seen before, and production like you've never seen. And that was so important to challenge our departments in those ways so that they could also say goodbye. And that wedding really felt like a goodbye, not just from the cast itself, but from all of our departments who kind of tipped their hat and said, we had fun. So it was, in editing it all together, I was just so pleased with how it came together, because everyone really kind of gave it 110% that day. And it was quite great to watch.
That was one of the
clearly
joys
was. I was just going to
working
say,
on
it clearly
the show.
was a blast for anyone who had anything to do with design, the whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the crew, many of whom were with us for all 6 years, were just so supportive on set as well, that no matter what was going on set, you felt like it encompassed everybody. And when there was funny reactions, the crew was showing you with their involvement in what you were doing, that they were totally behind the show and kind of loving their jobs on it as well. So that was also, it's nice when that happens. I'm sure obviously you've experienced that on your runs on Alias, where they're just, they're right with you. They're just right with you, and you can feel it, and you have their support and their love. And that's great.
So we're about to wrap up here, but I just wonder, when you were first coming up with the show, pitching it, selling it, how much of the where the story ended up going was in that initial Bible, and how much of it evolved because of living it?
Well, I think I'll just preface it by saying it's. I think a lot of the show really happened by, kind of living it. The presentation was a different kind of animal that we put together. The characters were kind of there on paper. The family, Stevie and la-di-da. But the show really, almost took a 90-degree turn once we started on the series. Wouldn't you say, Dan?
Yeah, I think once the cast was there, we had a much clearer idea of where it was going to go. And I think the one thing that remained a constant was just how much work we did on character. I remember going over to my dad's house and just spending weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks breaking every tiny detail of the characters. And I remember at the time being like, okay, can we just start scripting this show? But it was funny because so much of the show lives in the anecdotes, and Alexis in particular, so much of her life is told through stories that she lived in the past. And I remember a little bit, Alexis was like on a piece of paper as being this reality show that she had done. And it's one of those things that we didn't even get to for seasons. But then you kind of look back through the pages and realize that things were there, and a lot of Moira's backstory, and kind of, so from a character standpoint, it was all there. But then I think once we got the cast, you almost have to kind of relinquish a bunch of, what you own, what you think for yourself once you have a cast together, because you really have to start writing for a cast and not what you think that cast should be doing. And obviously the idea that this show was going to be about a family that unfolds over season after season and learns the true value of love, that was really the thesis from day one. So that never really changed. It's how we got there that I think is a direct reflection of the strength of our cast and just what everyone brought to the table.
Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, is there anything, if each of you were to say just something you want to keep from your character or the experience or each other, what would it be? I'll start. Go ahead, Eugene. You have to start.
Well, I think it's just knowing that uh, all the hard work and the love that you experienced doing this job means that something good is going to come of it. It has to. it, uh, things. I don't know if I'll ever be on a job that gave me the kind of joy that this show did in just about every aspect. So that's probably what I would take away.
What about you, Catherine?
I guess I'm confused. I thought it was take away from our characters. I'm going to steal from my character.
Sure, whichever.
Yeah. Well, or maybe the same sort of thing Eugene's talking about. Sorry. The chance to keep getting second and third chances with my kids. I hope I'm an okay mother to begin with, but the idea that you could have this second chance to get to know and love even more your kids, and for them to get to know you, and for you to be adults together and allow each other to grow and allow each other to continue to grow and change and evolve with each other and just grow your love even more together. I think that would be lovely to have. And I would love to have Moira's taste in clothes, nerve and taste.
Yeah. What about you, Annie?
Well, I interpreted that differently too, and I am going to take away and treasure your phone numbers and email addresses, so you can never flee from my life. That's what I'm taking.
Oh, please don't flee.
Yeah, I mean, mine is just an amalgamation of everybody's. I think from a professional standpoint, I don't think I've ever been prouder of a group of people in my entire life. And to end our season with the kind of recognition that we have, I mean, to see our entire cast rewarded with Emmy nominations, and not just our cast, but our incredible crew, our hair and makeup and our casting and our production design and our sound, it is overwhelming to feel that sense of pride for a group of people, and then to see them recognized on such a high level, it's overwhelming. And then, professionally, I feel like David was so confident and sure of himself, even though he was incredibly kind of held back by his own insecurities, that I certainly have taken a lot of his kind of unabashed confidence and pride in himself and what he does. So he's certainly made me a slightly stronger person, I think.
For me, I'm going to take the Rose's optimism and their, which I don't know that they're optimistic in the beginning, but they are proud. And they are, by the end, they certainly do make you believe that a little time stuck together with people you love, even if you drive each other nuts every now and then, is a pretty worthwhile way to stop and spend your life. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm certainly grateful for all of your performances.
Oh, thanks. And thank you so much for doing this and for your thoughtful questions.
This
really, thank you.
So much fun.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I know you guys are talking up a storm right now, so I'm sure we tread things that you are well worn, but they were fun for me to ask.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And fun. Honestly, really great fun.
Great. Well, I thought we were done, and now we're not. So let's talk about something else. There's,
I feel like if we keep, it's hard not to interrupt each other, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way to go.
There should be like a little timer in the corner or something that people can kind of.
Oh, we're done? We signed off?
Oh.
We're on.
Oh.
Still on.
But we're supposed to sign off.
Well, this is live television. It's what they call live television.
Just say goodnight. Just say goodnight.
In case people don't know, this is
Stop
live.
talking to the nice actors.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for watching at home.
I'll be in my closet.
See you there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.